Hello friends, welcome back to Spiritism for All, and today we continue to study the book Behind the Scenes of Obsession in the chapter New Events. The spiritual author is Manoel Philomeno de Miranda and the medium is Divaldo Pereira Franco. And let us remember you that at the description of this video you can find the link to download the book. As away from his permanent relationship with Mariana, thanks to the interference of the spiritual benefactors, Guilherme was all the time in a specialized treatment in order to rebuild his mental field, which has been shaken for centuries by the unhappy and destructive hatred. Mariana, otherwise, who was already psychically acclimated to the vibrations of her pulsar, felt his absence from the moment when Saturnino had taken him to the comfort of prayer, he who was the one who had become her unconscious and persistent executioner. So Mariana was feeling kind of sick due to the lack or to the absence of her obsessor. It's a strange process but very common. On the day immediately following Guilherme's first incorporation through psychophony, the young woman, after returning home, had let herself be overwhelmed by strong prostration. The emotions endured during that day, the painful and frustrated expectation regarding the desired colloquium with her boyfriend, the presence of Mrs. Aurelina, and the reunion with her mother wore out her psychic and physical resistances, which had long been vilely vampirized by her discarnate partner. The young woman woke up, therefore, indisposed and disturbed. She recalled the cruel nightmares of which she had been a victim, in which she seemed always to be haunted by a merciless assassin who wanted to take her life, waking up in turmoil and being plagued with constant delusions. Dona Rosa and Amália gave distressing assistance to the tormented girl, without achieving the desired results. Mr. Mateus, indifferent to the drama unfolding in his own home, remained apathetic, distant. Late afternoon, as Mariana continued to be in painful emotional turmoil, a doctor related to the family was called by Amália, who, after applying a sedative, recommended rest and confided to the afflicted mother his opinion that the young woman was suffering from a singular hysterical crisis, from which she could come out mentally disturbed. The noble lady, bathed in tears, redoubled her care at her daughter's bed and immediately asked Amália to seek charity in the hands of José Petitinga, inviting him to come to her home in a task of relief and compassion. The faithful servant of the gospel, and at the appointed time, having invited us beforehand, appeared with us solicitously at Soares' home, and we were taken to the room where the girl was sleeping, visibly agitated. After long concentration and sincere recollection through prayer, Petitinga, lovingly supported by his brother Saturnino, made a long application of healing blessings on the young woman, who slowly calmed down until sleep became repairing and calming. Interested in calming the afflicted family, he kindly clarified, Mariana, as we verified in last night's spiritual works, had been the victim of a seriously developed obsession, linked by the guilty past to a tormented companion who turned her into an avenging adversary. She absorbed for some years the deleterious energies in which she was involved, creating a psychic conditioning that, although wearing out her organism, served her simultaneously of sustenance. Released from the disturbing constriction, as we accompanied during those obsession activities, she resents and suffers the consequences of the lack of heavy fluids. And wishing to elucidate with more certainty, he added, It's like someone who, sat in a region of stale air, was suddenly transferred to a plateau of rarefied and pure air, which would produce a natural feeling of malaise, suffocation and torture. After a longer pause, as if rummaging through memory, and inspired by his guiding spirit, he added, I have the impression that the rescue work at night lengthened during the hours of sleep. Since this morning, several scenes have been imprinted in my mind that remind me of spiritual services with Mariana, her relatives, and the persecution spirit. I am sure that the processes under study will be extended for some time yet, and that we'll have to make a lot of efforts in order to equate the problems that are mixed up in the drama of this obsession, which is very characteristic, by the way. Sorry. At the moment, I see Saturnino, who, nodding with a peculiar nod of his head, calls us to patience, prayer, and vigilance. Mariana is not helpless, but she requires loving assistance and a lot of dedication until she can recover from the painful struggle whose liberation portal is only now visible, having a long way to go. We will come daily to apply healing blessings to her and instruct her spiritually as the case requires, so that she learns to tune into other areas of spiritual and moral thought, in order to effectively contribute to her own inner regeneration and recovery of health. Kindly saying goodbye to the visited family members, under the visible gratitude of all, when we arrived at the street, Petitinga continued explaining to me, assuming his usual attitude. It so happens that after awakening the centers of the subconscious memory, Mariana finds herself attacked by the very unbalanced images that she cherishes, and which can turn into an unhappy process of madness. Crazy people are not only those who are victims of specific infections, those who have brain damages, those who have suffered cranial traumas, those who suffer from brain tumors, schizophrenics, and many other situations that present themselves with other root causes. On the other hand, crazy ones are not just those obsessed by disembodied entities. The mentally ill, classified in any nomenclature, is a persecuted spirit in itself, a fugitive from the divine laws, taking refuge in a psychic organization that does not resist whims and overflows in hallucinations to the point of total alienation. Many unfortunate memories of past existences can suddenly come into the present consciousness. Many unfortunate memories of past existences can suddenly come into the present consciousness, freed from the deposits of subconsciousness, creating very complex pathological states. An observation. That's why past lives therapies that some psychologists make on their patients is very dangerous, because the memories of the past has a reason to be hidden from us, and when we awake them from our subconsciousness to the consciousness, we can create a lot of problems, because self-indulgence, self-forgiveness is not very common to us. We used to be very harsh judges of ourselves. These evocations can take on two distinct aspects: unconscious remorse, manifesting itself in the form of self-punishment as an attempt to repair the wrong done, and the other, one represented by tormented and persistent memory, generating the dystonia of reason, the imbalance of discernment. In Mariana's case, the second is the hypothesis that best fits her. The dystonia of reason, the imbalance of discernment. There was silence. The night invited meditation. The city's quiet streets suggested us a leisure pace. Interested in clarifying the problem, he added, as we observed during the aforementioned works, which took a long time when we went to bed last night, which I remember more and more clearly, Mariana faced her antagonist partially unfolded by sleep, and naturally remembered the escape from duty, from responsibility for the suffering that entails the current disaffection, thus keeping alive in the mind the scenes revised by the imperious needs for the spiritual reunion of the victim and the executioner, for the imposition of pacification. Nothing happens in the name of a protectionism that would be unjust and unworthy of our Father. Executioner and victim are children of the same love, momentarily separated by the disregard of duty, or by an unspeakable way of accepting the facts and events of life. Hence the inevitability of an existence based on ever-present concepts of the Gospel of Jesus. And is she likely to remake herself? I asked, interested. Always very calm, the interlocutor looked at me with his very clear and bright eyes and said, as you know, Miranda, the law is of love, without a doubt. However, it's also of justice and mercy. Much will depend on the Mariana girl. Dona Rosa told us that the doctor had diagnosed her problem as a hysterical crisis, maliciously leaving the suspicion that it was a problem of sexual nature. which I have no technical authority on the matter to dispute. Freud's disciples believe that sex is the explanation for almost all the problems that afflict man on earth. The affective communion undeniably permeated in the excellence of love, achieves a sublime exchange of forces and energies of various kinds that sometimes restore the physical and psychic organizations in disarray, especially when such exchange results in the blessing of children, since the spiritual enemies often take on filial clothing and are reborn in the arms of their former adversaries, temporarily freeing them from the disturbances they previously experienced, which gives materialists the false impression that the problem has been solved by calming sexual communion, by ignoring the laws of reincarnation, which are sanctifying doors of peace, for other implications to emerge later that only love, self-denial, pure forgiveness and humility, supported in prayer, can equate. It's very interesting what he explains here. To materialists, the couple pacifies their needs through the satisfaction of sexual needs, and sometimes both of them can equate their imbalances through marriage. But what we understand, looking by the spiritual side of those aspects of life, is that very frequently our adversaries are born as our children. Because if we are good fathers, good parents, good mothers, we help our children to correct their mistakes, to be loved, when we show them forgiveness, when we show them that we love them. So the previous adversaries learn to love us also. And this is very important because after a life of love and a good job, helping others, helping our family, helping our children, the previous adversaries feel how good we can be and feel loved. And when you feel loved, you forgive the errors from the past. And that's why marriage is so important and having children is so important. Unfortunately, nowadays, many couples prefer to have pets in order and not having children. Having pets may be funny, but you don't allow your adversaries to be born with you, to be loved by you. So, how to solve these questions? Then you see couples with happy pets, but very obsessed, and many of them very materialistic too. And it won't be a good life anyway. But let's proceed here. Let us trust that Mariana will free herself from the current situation as soon as possible and be able to prepare for a victorious tomorrow. There is also an argument that contradicts the materialist thesis that attributes almost unlimited feats to sex. often perfectly harmonized and sexually calm couples fall into regrettable imbalances, which do not fit into the hasty solution of using sex as a moderator for the emotional field. We had arrived at the place of transport. We took the trains and headed into a different direction. Since then, we daily visited the patients who slowly but surely showed signs of intimate recovery. There were more serious days, a natural consequence of the encounters held spiritually while she was asleep, and that she was not aware of when she awakened and recovered her organic lucidity. Instructed each day in the lessons taught by Petitinga, she soon after began to walk and was then able to attend the sessions of study and healing blesses led by the loving soul of Jesus. From time to time, she woke up restless, seeing herself in distant lands, experiencing understandable torments. Petitinga, aware of the obsession process, as the spiritual services continued in the various meetings, specially convened by Saturnino for this task, while we participated ourselves, when we assisted the sick, clarified and administered healing blesses, prayed and called us all optimistic to the services of hope and love. Several times he invited her to become emotionally close to Mr. Mateus, who always reserved, already presented some characteristic symptoms of senile psychosis. He who was also less harassed by Guilherme's tongues, now that the persecutor was undergoing treatment. Thanks to the defined letters of the general's exhibitor, the home of Soares was transforming itself, but still not completely, producing an atmosphere of relative understanding which resulted in a general good. But there was still a big problem there that you'll see in the future, related to her sister Marta. The way to go, however, was still very long. Only 4 weeks had passed since the clash between daughter and father, when the service of disobsession had begun. On the night immediately following the failed meeting, Adalberto, recovered from the gastrointestinal problem of which he had been victim, sought information about Mariana, finding out from a friend that she was ill. He then requested permission from Dona Rosa to visit her daughter, which was attended by the general's matron, although she did not understand the reason that led him to this impulse. Without understanding what had happened, Adalberto could not hide the singular surprise that greeted him when he visited Mariana. Broken, without vitality, the girl caused him immediate sympathy. Gazing at her in silence, he ran through his mind, unaccustomed to higher cogitations, the plans he had animated until almost vespers, letting himself be dragged along by blessed repentance. Seeing your near victim helpless, almost faint, a new feeling of affection began to grow up in his mind. Understanding the need to imprint a different direction on his attitudes. The physical life at his girlfriend's bedside seemed to him so fast and deceitful. He thanked God without words for the illness that had made it impossible for him to meet the young woman without understanding how everything had been established by the emissaries of good. From that night onwards he began to visit her regularly, under her maternal acquiescence, and then, out of curiosity and to be kind, he accompanied her to Spiritist dissertations, revealing himself to be an enthusiastic admirer of Spiritism and of Petitinga, who had won him over immediately friendship. When the doctrinal expositions were over, Adalberto invariably approached the Venerable evangelizing and presented him, in the form of intelligent questions, with problems that afflicted him intimately, or related the Spiritist reports with human facts and anxieties, social dramas, irreversible illnesses, in which millions of beings struggle and despair, and for which medical science, in the vast majority of cases, presents itself impotent. The serene, lucid, and logical answers offered by Petitinga dawned on the young man horizons of hope which he had never dreamed of before. Mariana, although her countenance has often troubled by a deep melancholy, invaded by an emaciated pallor of her face, registered the new lessons in her soul with vivid emotion. Sometimes, while she was receiving the recourse for the healing bless, she let herself be overcome by convulsive and desperate crying, taking a phasis of despair, as if frightful visions came to her mind, after which she fell into prostration. Petitinga, always interested in helping us with clarifications, in front of the sleeping girl explained, "This crisis comes from Mariana's visions of her spiritual persecutors, as they do not disturb her at the moment, since they are being spiritually supported. It so happens that her very spirit, yoked to remorse for many years before reincarnation, vigorously fixed on the seat of her spiritual memory, which would be later imprinted on her brain, the painful scenes that she had lived in the hospice of Haarlem, as she narrated to us when in astral projection by sleep in the reunion with Guilherme. The body is always for the indebted spirit, debtors that we all recognize to be, all of us, a sublime refuge, bearer of the blessing of momentary oblivion to the evils we practiced, and whose evocation, if it came to our conscience, would annihilate our hope of redemption. When addicted by the indiscipline of our will, he sends to the innermost part of the spirit the conditionings that turn into a scourge, passing from one reincarnation to another, until he purifies himself, freeing the centers of life from the vigorous impressions that have furrowed them. In the same order, errors and encumbrances practiced by the spirit in an evolutionary process are transmitted to the body that integrates them into form, indicating in the cells the impositions of repair itself, presenting themselves as limitations, frustration, repression, personality complexes, and other problems and illnesses, which are the hands of the divine law readjusting the offender to order. Like a sponge, the body absorbs the impressions that come from the spirit or eliminates them, as well as it takes from the environmental psychosphere and sending it to his depths, starting to experience its emanations. To bless, therefore, this sweet coat, as Francis, the saint of Assisi, tenderly called him, with discipline and education, is a duty that we must all impose for our own benefit, and that we cannot postpone. In the view of the doctrinal information offered by the distinguished benefactor Petitinga, we were moved, seeking to increasing weight of responsibilities that are incumbent on us in conducting the physical organization, unfortunately so little used by the vast majority of human beings. He explains something very important here. When you are incarnate, our body absorbs the impressions that comes from the spirit, and it's like a sponge. It takes all those feelings and brings them from subconscious to our consciousness in this life, creating troubles, but troubles that have to appear in order we can face them and win and go and advance. That's why we have the problems. And when we have faith and we try to solve and we try to behave better, we can free the spirit of that heavy past through a good life, immersed in love and faith. While the rescue work for Guilherme and the same time for Mariana, the ones most directly involved in the meshes of redemptive suffering, was being developed. She showed signs of restoring her balance, while we registered the benefits that were achieved to all of us, thanks to the application of fraternal charity. Next chapter, the obsessive processes. Thank you very much for watching us. If you like this video, please leave us a like, share with your friends, subscribe on the channel if you can, if you want, and leave us your comment. Thank you very much.